Okay.
All right. All right, good afternoon. Welcome to the Athens-Clarke County Board of Elections and Voter Registration Meeting. The date is February 21. The time is 4:35 p.m. Meeting is being held at 120 West Doherty Street in Athens. First item on the agenda is to adopt the agenda. The chair will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda unless a member wishes to make a change.
I move that we adopt the agenda. I
Okay.
think there's just a little bit of a correction on the spelling. Other than that,
Oh, okay.
it looks good.
All right,
Yeah.
do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Okay, agenda is adopted. Item on the agenda are to approve the minutes from January 10. And you'll find those in your packet. They look good to me, but does anybody else have a comment, question, concern?
Mr. Chair, it was pointed out there was a typographical error. I misspelled Doherty Street in the announcements.
Okay.
So I would correct that as a small amendment to the minutes.
All right. Hearing no other comment, Chair will entertain a motion to adopt the minutes with the change suggested by Mr. Shirley. Okay,
Second.
all right, motion, Ms. Till, second, Ms. Fambro. All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is public comment. And it looks like we have one person. Nope. Okay. All right. We have one person here present for public comment. So you'll get 3 minutes and I'll let you know when your time begins.
Mara Zuniga.
Hold on, let me just set the timer, sorry. Go ahead, thank you.
Mara Zuniga. I've been working with the Latino community for a long time. I've been asked to help from tutoring their children in certain subjects to translating to finance and homeownership questions. This I have learned Latinos want to do for themselves. They want to learn English. They want to know how the system works. They want to be good citizens. That is not going to happen if you, in the name of support, begin to give things to the Latinos, which they are not asking for. Support is a nice word, but it only makes those giving that unrequested support feel good about themselves. I have given ESL and civic classes to adult Latinos, and every time it's always the same complaint, not enough understandable English courses. I assisted in translating nursing classes to 3 Latino women who are on their way to learning English. But the opportunity arose to get this course and possibly jobs in the medical field before getting the language, but they dove right in. My own parents struggled to learn basic English to pass the citizenship test, which they did 40 years ago. After they struggled for that which they wanted, they always stayed on top of elections. Translating ballots does not guarantee a voter. The only thing that can guarantee a voter, in this case a Latino voter, is an informed person. And that can only happen if a person knows the language and the culture they are living in. You may not like my opinion based on experience, but if you're proposing this quote unquote support, ask yourself, who is making this request? Why? And where's the data? You look at the Asian and Indian community, they come to the US, learn the language, the culture, and immediately start a business, buy a house, and send their kids to Ivy League schools. And yet, one of the highest minority group in the US, the Latinos, keep continually being made to feel underrated instead of being pushed and promoted to be what these other cultures push themselves to be, informed and motivated to use the system to become financially independent and build wealth. So please consider that when you discuss the support for the Spanish ballot. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay. Any others wishing to make public comment? All right. Next item on the agenda is the director's report. In your packet, we have the usual report and then There's an additional note about implications of pay study results for poll workers. So Chair recognizes the director.
Thank you, Chairman Rathel, and good afternoon, board members. So you will have in your packet the activity report. The activity report shows that we have grown since last month in our number of registered voters. We have 70,386 active voters, 12,905 inactive voters, and a total of 83,291 voters. We had 86 cancellations. Two of those were voters who had moved out of state, 56 deceased, 26 felon removals, and 2 voters who requested their names be removed from the registration list. And those are shown in your report that you have, that you will affix your signature before you leave today. And I would like to point out that we have had or have issued 43 voter IDs, which was almost half as much as we did in December, because this is the January report. But those numbers they're lower than they normally have been in the past for some reason. So make note of that. The next item on my update is the special election that we are now in process of preparing for. We have a special election to fill the vacancy of Commission District 2. And as you know, it was vacated from Mariah Parker. And that was Commission District 2. That election will be held March the 21st. And qualifying has already taken place. Ballots are already ready. LNA it's almost complete. Poll worker training is in process. And we are getting ready for advanced voting. So today, I believe, is the last day to register to vote for this election. And so any voter who has not updated their address should do so before the end of the day. And if there is any voter who needs to register to vote and they are in Commission District 2, will be eligible to vote in that election. The advanced voting schedule is noted below that you, the board, approved. And it is also on our website. So if any voters are interested in wanting to know when that election will be, that's the place to go. And again, this election is only for voters who are residents or registered to vote in Commission District 2. I wanted to give an update on our conference. We just attended our state conference, and that took place at Jekyll Island, February 12th through the 15th. And our theme was I Heart Elections. To represent Clarke County, we had 2 board members, 13 ACC employees who attended the conference in person and 1 who attended by webinar. The session started on Sunday with elections officials and board members basic training. And I believe some of our board members, I think both of our board members who attended were there for that particular training. And it's always good to go to that, even though it's information that we've already heard. It's always good to get a refresher, and then we always learn some kind of best practice from another county. So that was really good. And it was a lot of new attendees at the conference this time. Monday topics included open records requests, creating stakeholders, municipal elections, candidate qualifying. On Tuesday, the topics included list maintenance, street maintenance, voter registration questions and best practices, continuing education, preparing for presidential election year, which entailed poll worker recruitment and training, poll worker online training, absentee balloting, UOCAVA, public notices, and staffing in the office. And then the session closed out on Wednesday with topics that included election equipment best practices, election security, county EMA, and the final Q&A. And I would like to, as the director of Athens-Clarke County, to just thank my staff and the board members who were able to attend the conference and represented Athens-Clarke County in a very collaborative way. As many of our team members served on some of the committees and provided the decorations for the banquet and throughout the training facility. The next Gario conference will be, which will be considered our 2024 conference. It will be held December this year, December 10th through the 13th at the Classic Center. So we here in Athens will be hosting over 600 people who are election administrators for the state of Georgia. And we're excited about that. So,
Question. Can you define here where it says stakeholders, creating stakeholders?
so,
Can I talk to that one, if you don't mind? Because that was one of my favorite sessions,
Yes.
actually. Stakeholders in that session, they're talking about just members of the community that have an interest in the elections, whether it be using their facility or media or voters in general, and making sure there's, you know, good relationships and communication throughout all stakeholders. I don't know if that answers your
Who are the
question.
Stakeholders that you're talking about though,
Well,
throughout the stakeholders.
well,
That's what you said.
yeah, so like in Athens, for example, our stakeholders would be the school district, the local media, or what if it there is,
political parties,
political parties,
clubs and organizations. Yes.
yeah, nonprofits, you know, just all parties involved in elections, and just making a symbiotic relationship together, I guess, you know, working, you know, if you're, for example, if you're telling the Democratic Party XYZ, you should also be telling the Republican Party XYZ, you know, copying each other, working together. So all the information is out there. One thing that was suggested was we go to each other's meetings and
Yeah.
just show that we're not just here to serve one party. We're serving all the voters. So that's one of the things that was talked about too. To your question.
I'll ruminate on it.
Okay. And I honestly did, that was all improv. I didn't have all that put together, but
But
Came
it's
out.
very good, very good. Let's see, the next item is the timeline for polling location and precinct line changes. And you should have a copy of that in your packet. And information that I'm referencing comes from the official code of Georgia, annotated 21-265. And it just simply spells out your duties as the superintendent, how to select polling locations, and when you're altering polling locations, what that process is. And I'm highlighting code section A, E, and F, the titles of those. So first of all, let me highlight that you, the superintendent of the county or the governing authority of a municipality, shall select and fix the polling place within each precinct and may either on her or its own motion, change the polling place within any precinct. And those changes shall not change any, you should not change any polling place until notice of the proposed change shall have been published for once a week for 2 consecutive weeks in the legal organ for the county or municipality in which the polling place is located. And on the first election day following such change, a notice of such change shall be posted on the previous polling place and at 3 other places in the immediate vicinity thereof. The occupant or owner of the previous polling place or his or her agent shall be notified in writing of such change at the time notice is published in the legal organ. And then I'm dropping down to section E. On and after July 1, 2018, the superintendent may establish the polling place for a precinct outside the boundaries of the precinct. If there is no suitable facility within the precinct which could be used as a polling place, and if, by doing so, such polling place would better serve the needs of the voters, provided, however, that no polling place shall be established outside of the boundaries of the precinct within 90 days of the primary or election, and the superintendent shall submit a report to the state election board demonstrate that there is no suitable facility within the precinct prior to establishing the polling place outside the boundaries of the precinct. And then highlighting a portion of F, a polling place shall not be changed on a day in which the primary election or runoff is held, or during the 60-day period prior to any general primary or general election or runoff from such primary or election. So based on that, I've fixed you a timeline that starts April 2023 with 2 work sessions, and those dates and times would be selected by you. And then in May, there will be further discussion as an agenda item on your May monthly meeting. And during that time, you will announce your public hearings. And your public hearings will be held, at least 2, in the month of May. And those dates and times also should be set by you. And then June, you will have a voting meeting where you will make a vote on what those proposed changes will be. And then that will be during your meeting, not like a special meeting, but during that meeting. And then June to July, we will begin making all of the changes and posting them in the areas that they need to be posted, starting with the changes on our system and in the Jarvis system, which is the new voter registration system by the Secretary of State's office. I will also make submissions to the AG's office, the Attorney General's office, the reapportionment office, and then, of course, there will be a file sent to the City Attorney's office and the Secretary of State, Director of Elections, our liaison, and our ballot builder of those changes. Then the notices will be posted and map information will be changed on our website. And we will share the information with our media circuits. And then in August, we will conduct our election forums. And during our election forums that we will hold or have been holding every 2 years. As of 2021, we will be holding our second one this year. So we're excited about that. And then 2 weeks prior to the PPP, whenever it's set by our governor, we will post notices at the 3 locations in the vicinity of the revised polling locations nearby, such as stores and gas stations. And then the weekend prior to the PPP, we will post the notices at all of the new and former locations to inform those voters that there's been some changes. And we will mail the registration cards to all of our voters before that. And then on Sunday prior to the election, we will publish a map in the Athens Banner Herald and on our website and with other media circuits. And then at the PPP, we will begin voting at our new polling locations. And those polling locations will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Election day. So there's your timeline. And so we've got work to do and it's going to come fast. So
Would it be helpful if we selected the April dates at least?
yes, I think that's a good idea. And so we're working now on maps. We will also ask our GIO office to come in and help with your work sessions. And we're going to have you some markers and some big maps with the vellum clear so that you can make changes if you want to make changes and make suggestions of where the precinct line should change if you wanted to do that. If you wanted to combine some precincts or however you want to do it, you'll have all of the supplies that you need to do that with. Okay. And then, let's see. I did not put this on here because I'm still getting my feel of all the different bills and stuff that's in the General Assembly, but there is anywhere from 15 to 24, I believe, bills in the General Assembly. So we're tracking those and I will send you updates of those in your emails. If you're on Firefly, which is the engine that we use for communications through the Secretary of State's office, if you have that, then you will see some of those are being updated in the buzz, but
Yeah, I know there was one today that was pulled out of committee. Joseph Kirk testified.
okay. Yeah, and then I know there's a cleanup bill too, that there's usually a cleanup bill that cleans up some code sections. And I think that's House Bill 475, so I keep my eyes on that. Anyway, I wanted to mention that to you, and then you have your copies of your open records request in the back.
Do any members have any questions or comments for the director?
Sure.
Mhm.
We accidentally did July.
Nobody?
Instead of
January 1st.
Yeah, she read. Any questions, comments for the director, Ms. Till? Ms. Till is recognized.
This demographics report here that's provided by the realtor, do we want to discuss that with her now, or do we need to include it with something on our agenda?
I was assuming it went under this, it was the materials for the discussion. That would be my assumption. but Is that,
Yeah.
okay, let's wait. Yeah.
Mr. Sherman has a question.
Mr. Shirley is recognized.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Me.
Director Sosby is, like you mentioned, you recommended that the weekend prior to the presidential preference primary, we would mail registration cards to all voters. And your recommendation, would it be just to make sure everyone's communicated with? We want to say everybody, even if their precinct's not affected? That way they have confirmation of what their precinct is.
No, so it'll only be the voters who were affected by the change, but it won't be that week prior. So
Okay.
that was a typo.
Okay.
By law, you have to inform voters within 30 days before the election.
Gotcha.
So what we would do is once we start making those changes in Jarvis, we'll go ahead and mail them then. So it's likely that the voters who will be affected by the change will receive their cards no later than October.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
It's very likely.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Will we have like a comprehensive list before you start making the changes in Jarvis, or how of those affected, or?
Now, this will be our first time using Jarvis.
Right.
Now, prior to that, in ENAT, we would get a list. And it would tell us exactly which voters, like a list of those voters who were affected by it. So I'm not sure, but I'm gonna say yes, it's very likely that we will. This is supposed to be a better system than what we used previously, so.
I will add one more thing about the conference. And there was a session on something that I nerd out about, and I think Lisa does too. Emergency management, the emergency management director from Hall County gave a presentation on the center they run on election day, and I'm hoping we can implement some version of that in the future.
That has always been my vision, so.
Yeah, and again, going back to the stakeholder things, like costs a lot of money to bring the decision makers in a room for a day. So we would have to say, this is why we need to pull you off your job to be in this room for, and that's the kind of thing that the presentation was about. So, yeah. All right. The next item on the agenda under old business is continuing discussion about changes to voter precincts for 2024 elections. And that number or that item was under Mr. Shirley. And I think it's just a continuation of the discussion we were having. However, I'm going to set a 10-minute timer. Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this flows perfectly from the director's update. I want to clarify for anyone listening that what we're talking about has no effect whatsoever on 2023. The upcoming special election is the same precinct we had last time. That is not going to be affected by this at all. Any changes we might make would be for 2024 if we even decide to make any changes. I think I'm so thankful we began this discussion last month because we have a great timeline. If I'm reading this correctly, if we follow this timeline from the time we make our decision on this, any changes we want to make, there'd be 11 months for those things to be all the way communicated and taken care of and all the, T's crossed and I's dotted before we had to have an election day in these new places. So that I guess the next logical step would be, like you said, to see if we can sort of hash out those two, what's it called, work session dates for April.
I think it's appropriate to figure that out, but I don't know that picking dates requires a vote, so.
It's true, it's true. We're all
We
here.
want to
but-
just look at our calendars real quick and see what dates in April work. I think we're all, unless you have some kind of school break in April.
First week in April, I'm wide open. So
Okay.
I'm on spring break. So I would be very flexible that week, but any other day.
Or we're making faces.
There's spring break in Clarke County too, right?
It is.
But otherwise I can meet any weekday, just about any weekday after 4, just like we usually do.
I was planning to go to Vegas that week, so.
Okay. Good luck to you.
Which one, the first week of April?
If we keep the after 4:30 kind of thing, I'm generally open. Does anybody else have preferences on dates, times for April?
I'm flexible, so I'll work around Adam's schedule.
Well, let's just run a dart on the board here. Monday, April 3rd, 4:00, 3:00, maybe that'd be better for staff. Ms. Adams, off work.
Of course, I'm there, but
I'm gonna say about Monday. Monday, I don't know about anybody else, but for me, it's like kind of a catch-up day.
Okay.
And I think that would be business-wise too. People are trying to catch up. Or am I wrong? I don't know.
Tuesday, I'm just throwing a dart at the board here. Tuesday at 3:00. Thumbs up.
Tuesday, the 4th.
Tuesday, the 4th at 3:00 works for me. Okay,
But that's for the first meeting.
yeah.
How many hours are you expecting?
2-hour session.
I think,
I would
yeah.
plan for 2 and that would
2-hour
celebrate 1.
Yeah.
You
And
give a
if it
conflict
doesn't-
or?
Oh, I'm just,
Let's,
considering work sessions I've been to before, you might want to plan more than 2 hours for something like that.
Well, the rest of my days, so it's fine.
Now, will you have public comment during these work sessions?
Our bylaws don't allow for public comment at work sessions, I thought. Only meetings.
I see.
I don't know.
I think it is just
Mr.
me.
Attorney,
nobody else is even saying Athens-Clarke County that I noticed. They don't do.
do you have our bylaws handy?
Now I'm gonna stake a little bit of money on that.
I would like
Nobody
public
else-
comment. Make sure
Nobody
they feel
else,
engaged.
nobody else does that.
Okay,
Let the public comment during work session.
Yeah.
Nobody
okay.
else does
So let's
that.
do
I
April
don't think we
4th,
do.
3:00 with public comment. I think, yeah,
With public comment?
without. so-
With that?
Okay.
So let me ask you this then. So you're gonna have your meeting on the 4th. So just a suggestion. If you're gonna do that and then your board meeting is gonna be the next Tuesday, I think that would be a good time to have people do public comment on stuff if they just.
Yeah,
need to.
yeah, I think that's great.
And then
So-
have the second work session.
Of course, it's open to the public, but the floor will not be,
Open. The floor will be closed.
yeah, so then people can bring it to next week if they really have a problem with it. Or a
Or
compliment
that's Suggestion.
from something we did, yeah.
Yeah.
Then what do you think, the last week of April for the second one? That's a lot of meetings in April.
Or
Maybe the third week. I don't want to be contrary, but,
The
just
18th,
trying to get, through it. It's not overlook anything, but get through it as quickly as possible so we can hit our time parameters if something goes amiss.
Mhm.
yeah, and then you want to do it on a Tuesday again.
I was thinking a Wednesday, but totally, again, random comment. That week, we'd be back at 4:30.
That would be my availability.
So is there a reason you wouldn't want to have another Tuesday? Because it would be
Not in particular.
kind of like our voting blocks that we decided to keep everything the same and consistent.
What about Tuesday, the 18th at 3 again? We just, Adam will join us later.
that all right?
Sure, I'll come screaming in as soon as I can, but
Yeah, I think 4:30 is too late for a work session for staff because it just goes on into the night. you know.
Yeah.
So you said the start time is 3. What is the end time?
That's that.
Is that a decided end time? You know, Lisa.
I'm not going on the record with an end time.
At least 2 hours.
Yeah,
yeah.
a minimum.
That's up to Charlotte, what your end time is. How about that?
And April.
You know, I
the
just set my
18th.
Oh, there you go. Okay, so the 4th and the 18th at 3:00. Lexington Road?
18th.
I think
You
that'd be.
probably need to check, but okay, done.
Then I guess if we have any time remaining,
We do.
I'm just
3
curious. I know that last time we opened it up to kind of share any resources we would need to have, and you got some great ideas. Anybody else think of other things that would be great to have at this work session?
I thought of a couple of things. I'm just waiting for someone to mention this, but, and probably already, are going to get it, but, maybe, and within those maps, there'll be all county buildings occupied and vacant marked, with either a V or a O for occupied. And also, maybe, from, buildings that our now stakeholders have that we could possibly use, and have those marked, like, maybe additional schools or some other buildings who we, churches, have those also marked on the map.
So churches, school, government buildings,
Mm-hmm.
and you want marked vacant V or O.
Mm-hmm,
Right.
VO,
Okay.
What was the last? How she wants it marked if it's
V or O, vacant or occupied.
Is that it?
I was thinking it, something ran through my head and just went, "Oh."
Christel, did you have anything? Come back to me.
Well, I'm assuming the GIS folks will be here and we will have an interactive map. Because if we want to move some lines and how it's affected in terms of balance.
Yeah.
So
And could we have,
it's not just they're going to give us printed maps, they're going to bring in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that Joseph can do that stuff live. It seems like,
Yeah,
I think so.
yeah,
Yeah.
because like if you want to shift some lines, some
Yeah.
precinct lines, he'll be able to tell you if that's
yeah,
legal or not, you know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
tell
So
where the,
that's why we
where
want
the
to have the
borders
come.
are and where
Right,
it's clearly
right.
drawn out.
Yes,
And for me, where it's clearly drawn out, where District 2 starts and stops and District 3 picks up.
yeah,
And show me within District 2 where the polling place is located.
Yeah.
And show me in District 3 where that polling place is
Uh-huh.
located. So some are on the fringes.
uh-huh,
It might be consideration for moving them into maybe possibly closer to the middle, centralizing it for people instead of, it being back in a corner somewhere just for a few number of people.
right, right. Chairman Rappin, I want to mention that your bylaws does not cover work sessions. Doesn't mention anything about work sessions, so.
We don't.
we have 1 more minute. Anybody have any other comments on this topic?
If our bylaws don't have, work sessions in it, then we really need to take a vote. If it doesn't provide for us having, work sessions.
I think she was referring to the public comment.
The public,
The public
I'm sorry,
comment thing.
I'm sorry, okay.
All right. Well, we finished with 26 seconds to spare. How about that?
Well, let me take up some of those seconds. If we are going to have public, is it possible for us to engage in a conversation with the public, or the only thing we will ask them is to make a comment?
No, that'll be,
Since there is no,
Okay.
I generally,
that'd be.
it's certainly this body's prerogative to decide how it wants to do public comment. Most bodies generally just give the opportunity to hear and don't engage. That can lead to a
Slippery slope.
slippery slope, but that's up to this body.
A suggestion, maybe we can listen to the public comment, not respond, and then at the end, if we have a comment as to why we agree or disagree, then we can have our comment where we don't have a back and forth. They comment, and then at the end, we comment.
That's what
If-
I
if-
do
may I?
sometimes for myself, yeah, but sorry, I lost my train of thought. What I'm thinking is work session, just like, we had just talked about with work session on the fourth, regular meeting on the, and then I think we need to just work without,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, because
comment, and then they can come and say, you did this wrong, you did this wrong, I love this, I love this. To the next section, we can take all that.
Whatever you choose.
yeah, and I've been to a bunch of those type meetings. And from where I was sitting out in the audience, if they had been allowed to interact, almost 99% of those meetings would have fell into not big chaos, but chaos. Because this back and forth, you're trying to work and discussing among your fellow members what's really going on in the job that you need to get done. And you've already had, if you got over 5 or 6 people, you're already gonna have this whispering in the background. But then when you get the public involved, it's gonna be chaotic.
So let's just move on. If you, as long as we're not doing anything illegal, attorney, per the Open Meetings Act and all that stuff.
There's not a requirement that you have public comment.
Okay.
I don't think the mayor commission have public comment for work sessions. Do they?
Board of Education doesn't do it. and
Yeah.
Some other
Okay.
people, they
So
don't.
I think that's a good plan.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda is status of letter to Clark County School District School Board and superintendent about improving communications between our office and theirs regarding election logistics. That is my item, and it won't take 5 minutes because I started a draft with some suggestions from or input from staff, that Lisa's team. And then I never finished it. So it's still in draft mode. My intention is still to do it, but such is life and getting busy and all that. So I'll entertain a motion to table again to the next month, which is March.
I'll make a motion to table.
Yeah. I know what's up, but yeah,
I second.
okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. That item is tabled. The next item on the agenda is resolution for advanced voting schedule template. And that is Mr. Kadir. The timer is 10 minutes, but I think we might need a little more than that. So let's see how it goes.
Well, I won't even take but a minute because I've been out of town since our last meeting, literally the day after. I would like to table it till April. I'd like to do this after our special meeting is over. I'll get together with the staff a little bit and see, what are realistic options and bring it to the board for suggestion, and we go. We don't have a lot of time, but we do have some time before the election after that. Nothing is going to change for the March election anyway.
Any other comment? Otherwise, the chair will entertain a motion to table.
I so move.
Okay, second?
A second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. That item is also tabled until
April.
April. Mine was tabled until March, just for clarity here. Okay. The next item on the agenda is discussion regarding Spanish language support for future elections. That item was put forward by Mr. Shirley. And so what we'll do is start another timer. Go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am really excited for this item to come before us for consideration. We've already kind of begun a discussion over email, but I wanted to, for the sake of catching us up and letting the public know, I plan to make my suggestion, make my little proposal tonight, but not persuade anybody, not coax anything out of anybody, just to hear and listen to your concerns, jot those down, go back and research those, and then come back to us later on and hopefully address those concerns. Then with an eye toward building, hopefully proceeding on this. So the idea is to provide Spanish language translation for all the election materials that we currently provide in writing for our voters. I would like for this to include, I'm envisioning this including everything from the voter registration application to election announcements, to the sample ballot, to the electronic ballot on the BMD, to the printed ballot they put into the scanner, to the things we post on buildings, all the kinds of things that currently a voter can see in English would be then available in Spanish. That's what I'm envisioning. So I would like to sort of wrap that up there and just leave it there and hear your thoughts. I'll drop them down. And then if it's okay with the chair, I'll read it back what I've got from y'all so I can make sure I heard everything right and then wrap it up and we'll move on and come back and talk about it at a later meeting. That's my idea.
Okay. Would anyone like to respond to Mr. Shirley or put additional comment to that? Mr. Kadir?
I believe, Mr. Shirley, you have read my response to those, the concerns that I had. I put up 5 of them. Are you able to address some of them or in general or specificity?
I can, but I want to, like, I came here tonight not wanting to, I'd like this to be something that we carefully deliberate on. And so I can definitely address them, but I just don't, I don't want to feel like I'm twisting people's arms or anything. I want to just sort of see where we're at, pulse check, and then come back. But I can if you'd like me to.
No, rather, I'll leave it up to you, but since this was only personal between our board members, I'll just go ahead and address them. So see why I'm not feeling comfortable just jumping into it right away without a little more data. One of the things you mentioned in your suggestion was you have a goal, 75% turnout. Did I misread that?
No.
I do not see how that can be remotely possible with, I'm looking at the table that our director forwarded to us. And as for that one, the Latino vote was 61%, 58%, depending on which one you're looking. So even if we got massive amount of registration, your percentage is not going to increase. The number of voters may increase, but the percentage is not going to increase. So that is one issue I have. But the key issue I have is the first question. Have we heard anything from the Latino community? I apologize, I came a little late today and I had asked Ms. Zuniga to give her comments. I'll go back and read that. But have you received any kind of, someone to urge you to look into this, any groups of people, groups of commissioners, or is this just something at this point we feel we should look into it because we have 11% Latino population?
I've heard from voters who would feel it would benefit from this.
Okay. Then there were a couple of basic questions that we can find out later on. The percentage of Latino population above the age of 18 that only speaks Spanish. I'd like to know that number. And then there has to be some number, some measure to know that at this point we are going to bring in translation for other languages, because you did mention what the DeKalb and Gwinnett are doing, Korean, Vietnamese, Mandarin, Cantonese. What is the population we should have in Athens before we should consider it? I mean, if it's just going to be 10 or 15 people, I don't think we'll go that far with it. So that is one information I'd like to have. And also based on Gwinnett and DeKalb counties, since they know what the cost was, they know how many additional voters they registered, I'd like to know the cost per new additional voter and compare it with, well, right now I don't have anything to compare it with, but why we cannot even get some of our other segments of population to come out and vote. How are we going to get people who really, I have not seen any interest from that community to say, hey, we are having a problem, please address. So I'd like to know what that is. And the last thing I had was, well, it's more of a subjective question, but if we can have some of these numbers, then I think we can at least have a conversation about it.
Absolutely. Understood. Thank you.
Go from there.
Thank you.
Ms. Till, Ms. Fambro?
Did we hear in the past, I think from Director Sosby, that to go forth with translating materials, that we would have a particular percentage of our voting population or our general population before we could have that approved or even consider it?
I think well, I may be incorrect, but I understood that as a requirement once you reach the threshold to do. I think that Mr. Shirley's project, for a lack of a better word, is voluntary rather than required, which Gwinnett County needs, correct me if I'm wrong.
I've seen some of the emails. That's the way I read it. It's not required in this jurisdiction. It's voluntary.
So at any percentage, we could proceed with it?
Yes.
I think that's probably correct. One thing I think we'd have to be aware of is making sure that you ask for the funds in your budget or had it approved by the commission to do this service.
Right.
But
I think that's a separate.
I'm not aware, I haven't done any legal research, so I'm not aware of any prohibition. Actually, Charlotte was just sharing me that she asked at her recent training, and they indicated that it was up to each jurisdiction unless it was required. Of course, it's required to have to. But obviously, we'd want to make sure that you had someone who was qualified to do the translations. I guess the other thing I would think about is there's some type of equal protection issue we might get into I don't know what the breakdown of different groups is in. You certainly would not want, you want to make sure you don't have any equal protection concerns. What I mean by is doing it one group and not another. But you open yourself up to some type of challenge like this. And so,
would that be at the state or federal level, those concerns?
will it be a concern to citizens suing us saying that, we have say there's an equal protection violation, you're doing it for this group and not for my group. I mean, I don't know, but I don't know how many different ethnic groups. You mentioned several they have in another community.
And I guess I ask because I know that there are other states that do it on a statewide basis. So that would they be making the challenge against us on a state law of equal protection as opposed to a federal?
Protection is like a constitutional challenge, like the Constitution, United States Constitution.
So Judd, if I could just maybe say it differently, if we were going to do this, consider the methodology. Is there a certain percentage threshold what are you basing it off of?
Yeah, that's the kind of thing somebody start asking questions.
Okay.
I mean, it's not my job to try I just think you have to be deliberate when you start to make decisions like this and consider possible consequences.
Okay.
And
Let's
besides
hold on. The floor is Ms. Tells, so if she's done.
Now, I have another comment.
Yeah.
I think all of you know me well enough that I'm not a mean-spirited person, but I believe in the law. I believe in the Constitution. And I think it was Teddy Roosevelt that said for people that are immigrating into our country, for them to assimilate and actually become Americans, that they need to learn the language that helps them. As Ms. Zuniga has already stated, learning the language and learning the society is going to help them, not going to hinder them if they have to learn the language. And I think that would be, to some people, getting up and going to work every day is a task. Other people love it. I'm sorry, I don't know really how to turn this off.
Thank you, answer.
Goodbye. But I think that we don't always want to put a diaper and a pacifier in everybody's mouth to make ourselves feel good that we're helping these people. I think Mrs. Zuniga is a good representation of her community, and these people have spoken with her. She's worked with them. She knows them. And I value what she has said to us. And I think that we need to give her comments some weight and not just think, this is what I want to do. But I think assimilation is really the best path to help people become citizens.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Till. We've run out of time, so let's extend the time if we want to.
Yes, I move that we extend time for another 10 minutes.
Okay, I'll second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right. We done?
Mm-mm. Oh,
Ms. Till is done.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Fambro, you have not spoken, so
No.
the floor is yours if you wish.
Then maybe I'll take a different viewpoint than not everybody in the room, but as far as my representation on the board. And we talk about assimilation. And as slaves, we were forced to assimilate. It would have been wonderful today to be speaking my native tongue, but we had no choice. And I think that people still should be allowed choices. And I look at it on that wise, and I restrain myself from looking at voters as percentages and numbers. And because every vote counts, it's not how many percentage of votes, but every vote counts. And every vote that is added to the rolls by whatever means necessary that is legal, I feel that we should try to do everything that we can to do that. And I appreciate the commentary that was made, but I would love to see this made available and let each individual person decide whether this is what they want to do or not. And not just, wholesale, well, we're not going to do this. And for me, giving people an opportunity to vote and giving them the tools to vote, it's not like for me forcing anybody to do, So I am deeply, deeply in favor of this happening. And I think that Alan has stated, we're not talking about this happening under this budget, but we have the budget starts like July 30th, 2024. Maybe a little off on that, but it's not anything that we're going to be rushing into, because when December comes, we're going to pay a lot more attention to the budget and budget concerns, and even probably be studying what the budget is going to look like, and, even touching bases with the mayor and commissioners to see if we can get some kind of increase for this. And I don't think that we'll be going in this thing haphazardly, but I think it's going to be well thought out. And I think that my role here is to help increase the voter rolls and to help people to get to the polls, as far as, getting there and making a way for them to get there and having convenience in areas where they can get to those polling places without a lot of difficulty. That's how I view my person on this board.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize, but I have to leave the commission meeting.
Okay,
That's
yeah,
fine, that's
we're not
fine.
going to be making
Yeah, I understand.
So, I have a few
Thank you.
thoughts, and they're kind of in response to what has been said and also my own original thought. It's probably apparent, but I'm a native English speaker, but I do have members in my family who are native Spanish speakers who have moved to this country and learned the language and become citizens. Now, I don't think that my cousin is going to read Shakespeare in English. He's probably going to read it in Spanish, because that's what's comfortable and that's what's familiar to him, even though both languages he can speak proficiently. So something that's as important as voting, I think that you should be able to read about it and make your decisions in a language that is comfortable to you. Okay, so, and then the next point I want to make, which was addressed, what about other languages? I think the same thinking applies to any language. Where do you draw the line? I think that's where we need to do some more research and some more digging. And, there are resources I know that the school district and hospitals use as far as translation lines. So maybe that's something we want to look into to offer our voters, call 1-800-TRANSLATE. And they can help you with the documents in a native speaker and maybe answer questions and have a dialogue. So that's maybe a way to address Korean or Mandarin or something else. And then I'm with Ms. Fambro on the percentages thing. Whether there's a need or not, honestly, I don't care. I think it's the right thing to do because again, maybe you don't know what's out there. I mean, what if you don't speak English at all, but you have people in your house that do, students that go to our school district who are old enough to vote? But what if the parent sees the things and says, all right, son and daughter, this is voting. I didn't get to do this in my home country, and this is something you get to do, and let me teach you about it. You know, that I'm a parent, so that's how I think. And that's kind of my, so. We have 4 minutes left, so I think we'll just, Mr. Shirley.
If I might, Mr. Chair, I'd like to hear from Director Sosebee, if you might be able to speak.
Yeah.
to
May I
anything.
ask, just add a quick question, which I'd also like to Director to respond to that.
If we run out of time.
Okay.
Let's just let the director speak and then.
So I provided you guys the handout that shows the total number of people who are registered by race and by, well, I went ahead and totaled it by race, basically, and total registered versus total voted. And that gives you an idea of, we have a 61% voter turnout of our Asian voters, Hispanic 58% turnout. This was from the 2020 election. Again, this is a general election, presidential election, one that most voters turn out for, right? 60% Native American of our voters actually voted, but then our numbers are very low. We have 1,500, close to 1,555 Asian voters registered to vote, Hispanic 3,249, and then 135 Native American. So you have that to reference. Also wanted to share the Voting Rights Act of 1965, Section 203. And it just simply says that a state will be mandated to provide another language if the voters is more than 5% of the voting age with a single language minority group and do not speak and understand English adequately enough to participate in the electoral process. So there's your percentage there. So I have that information. And then I reached out to Gwinnett County and DeKalb County. I haven't received any information from DeKalb, but for Gwinnett County, so Gwinnett County is the only county in the state of Georgia that has been mandated to offer Spanish language ballots as well as material. And this came about 2016. When there was a middle of the census area where they actually met the threshold. And they spent, I remember this very, very clearly, they spent an entire year of legal hearings and translations and everything. And they were ready for the 2017 election. And so their municipalities were the first voters who were able to vote and make the choice of either voting Spanish or English. So I have the contract information that the state uses. It's called Ad Astra. And so they provide translation needs. And he stated that it might be the easiest way to get started with quotes on translation services. And so I have the information. And so for one tier, which is Spanish, would be $40 an hour of translation. If you go another tier, where the other tier has a whole lot more languages like Vietnamese, Mandarin, Burmese, Korean, French, Farsi, Russian, Amharic, Arabic, it goes on and on and on. So that's your second tier, but then your third tier, it's all other languages that's not listed. So it can be like very complex. But they have an ongoing, contract with them, and they've already broken out the state of Georgia into regions, so we actually are in Region 2. And Region 2, see if I can understand what he said here. Region 2. Anyway, $40 an hour, and then if we go with 2 languages, 50. And after the first hour service, it goes half, like, you can go in half hours, so, okay?
I think we'll just let the director finish.
Okay, and, yeah, so this is where we are, and that's for reasons 1, 2, 4, and 5, so I guess it's different for the other regions. But we all are in the same region as Gwinnett and DeKalb, looks like.
Could you send that information to the board?
I sure will. No, we're not in those regions. So Gwinnett and DeKalb are in Region 3, so they have a totally different kind of thing. But yes, I will forward this to you. And as I hear more from DeKalb County, which I believe DeKalb made the choice to make it an option. So they weren't mandated, my understanding were, so.
Take us home.
All right, just so then to wrap up, like I said, my goal here was to listen. I've heard a bunch. I want to be sure that I've captured, and I'll refer to the video, but y'all given me many concerns that I would like to address. I am confident that I can find an answer to each of your concerns. I hope it'll be sufficient to address those concerns. But yeah, hopefully I can bring this back up next month. I do want to share, I forgot to mention this. Like Ms. Fambro was saying, I'm not in a rush to get this happening. I would love for this to happen soon, but I understand there's a process. We want to be very careful. Like Director Sosebee said, it's a complex process. We don't want to leave any stone unturned. I had hoped that this would be available within time for our municipal elections next May. But that would be under the fiscal year 2024 budget, which I understand, Mr. Chair, that the deadline for us to submit this request was back in December when we were in the throes of the election going on. So I understand that our bite at the apple, so to speak, has come and gone. We've had our chance. But there are powers higher up the ladder from us, the chain of command than us, who can address the budget any way they would like to for the one coming up still. But our chance has come and gone for fiscal year 2024. But again, hopefully we can make this part of a more deliberative, careful effort for 2025, for the fiscal 2025, which would include the general election for next year. So thank you all very much. I really appreciate the input. Great.
What is this?
Yeah, so in the director's report, I noticed on your agenda, it's got implications of the case study results.
Oh, yeah.
Coworkers.
Yeah.
So I forgot to bring
Okay,
that up.
let's go back to that.
Yeah. So on January 18th, I met with HR Director and Manager Jones, and we discussed the pay for our poll workers. And as you are aware, the Mayor and Commission approved a $15 minimum for part-time employees prior to the 2021 elections. And during that time, backing up, our poll workers were making anywhere from $13 to $11 an hour based on their position, right? So in July last year, HR implemented the new $15.60 minimum hour rate. And so there was a graduating rate. We just really found out that our poll workers are receiving now. Our coordinators, who are our managers, receive $17.94 an hour. Our assistant coordinators, or what we call assistant managers, are $17.16 an hour. And then clerks receive the minimum, which is $15.60. And so our conversation, basically what happens is our poll workers are backing right into our part-time no benefit employees. So there's still some study that's going to be taking place this year that will address the differences in those two, because they are two different pay scales and have two different kinds of responsibilities and security levels. So that's going to be addressed later, but our poll workers are in a good place right now.
Great. On that topic.
Director Sosebee, those numbers, were those effective for the election we just finished? That was what they were being paid?
Yes.
That's wonderful news, because I think what the concern had been that we thought they had been given the benefit of the floor, but there was no differentiation between coordinators, assistant coordinators, and clerks. Okay, good to know.
Has the board been adjusted within that?
No, which is what, I'm gonna have to have a conversation with y'all again about that.
Let's put it on. the-
I know, so.
But
it's- so
I
we're
was
not-
gonna suggest the easiest way is to match the manager. But let's talk about it again.
Okay, yes.
We don't, it wasn't prepared.
Do we have time for a quick question on this topic?
Nothing's working.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Key. Text from my wife. I'm gonna address a text from my wife, not on my phone. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Director Sosby.
Yes, I'm sorry.
This was implemented, did we have to adjust the wages of our staff so that, there is some differentiation between our temporary workers that are full-time and a part-time staff?
Yeah, so that's what they're gonna be looking, what HR is gonna be.
Oh, that hasn't happened yet.
Yes.
Okay, so sorry.
That's the conversation,
Okay.
yeah, that's being looked at.
Okay, so Mr. Secretary, can we add board pay once again to the agenda? Hopefully we can lay it to rest at some point. All right, the next item on the agenda are announcements. Through them, and we'll get from there. Our March regular meeting will be on March 14th, 2023 at 4:30 PM. We will be at this location, which is 120 West Doherty Street. It will also be my birthday. Cards and balloons appreciated. Upcoming deadlines for the 2023 special election for Athens-Clarke County District 2, February 27th, which is next week, is the earliest day that we can mail regular absentee ballots for the special election. Advanced voting begins for that election on the 27th. March 10th is the last day to submit your absentee ballot in order for your vote to count. And election day is on March 21st. It is incorrect in the agenda. And am I correct in that, right?
Yeah,
You are correct, it's correct.
Okay,
Wait,
Yeah.
21st. And I want to announce that was discussed earlier in this meeting, the board will hold a work session to discuss polling precincts for 2024. Those dates will be on April 4th and April 18th at 3 PM. And that meeting will be held at our Lexington Road location, 2555 Lexington Road,
3 PM.
3 PM.
Yeah,
3
3
PM. Okay. The next item on the agenda is to adjourn unless any other member has a parting question or comment.
Yes, can,
It's small, but
can I get an update get you an update for the absentee ballots?
Sure.
For the-
Yeah, let's do that.
as of today, we have only received 10 absentee ballot applications for this March 21st special election. And out of those 10, only 3 of them are qualified by living in Commission District 2. The others have been notified that they are not eligible.
Okay.
So
Right.
slow, but
Yep.
maybe, some applications will fall like manna from heaven.
There we go. There we go. All right.
Have a quick question. So, what is our, remind me, what is our policy on Yokova absentee requests for elections, special election like this overseas? If you receive a
They still,
request,
it's the same type request, but, and another thing I meant to add, as far as the, when we get to, our early opening and tabulation, And I gave some dates at our last meeting. Those dates would definitely be adjusted. It would probably only be the date of the election based on what we're getting so far. And, as far as Uokava, yeah,
They'll be mailed, it won't be electronic.
so, and we haven't heard anything from any Uokava voters. So all the ones, the applications that did come in, they're all local. And like I said, unfortunately, 7 of those 10 are not in Commission District 2.
Well, that shows that either they didn't receive the message correctly or we need to improve over the
Right.
years how to set out the message. But this is to be expected.
Yeah, and while we have the media's attention, our community's attention, I would like to mention how important this election is. It's just as important as any other election. I do hope that Commission District 2 voters will come out and make their voices heard. I've spoken with some other counties like close by, and their voter turnouts for their special elections that they just conducted were very low. Like, I'm thinking like 35 voted early some of these elections. And so I hope Clarke County will show the state of Georgia that we're better than that. Our voters, we're gonna put those days out there for them to vote early, absentee balloting, and we're gonna be open on election day. We want our voters to turn out and make their voices.
Well, you saw the turnout at the library. So based on that, I'm expecting a very large turnout or hoping even more than what I'm expecting.
Yes. Sure.
All right.
On Commission District 2.
The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do we have a second? Okay. All those in favor, wishing to go home, raise your hand or say aye.
Uh,